Megan adjusted the lens of her vintage camera, a rare find she had picked up at a flea market a month ago. It was a Leica M3, a classic she couldn't resist. As a seasoned photojournalist, she had an eye for details, and this camera, with its polished silver body and heavy, comforting weight, seemed perfect for capturing the essence of life on the streets. Today she was at a busy park in downtown Manhattan, snapping candid shots of the hustle and bustle. A street performer juggled brightly colored balls, a couple laughed together on a park bench, and a group of kids chased after pigeons. Megan felt a familiar rush of excitement as she captured these fleeting moments, freezing them in time. Later that evening, she developed the photos in her dark room, watching as the images slowly came to life on the glossy paper. She smiled at a shot of the street performer, mid-juggle, the vibrant colors of his props vivid even in the black and white print. Then her gaze fell on a different photo, one she didn't remember taking. It was a picture of a young woman standing by the fountain, staring directly into the camera with a look of quiet sadness. "Strange," Megan muttered, holding the photo up to the light. She had no memory of the woman, but the photo had an eerie clarity, as if it had captured more than just her image. The next day, Megan returned to the park, hoping to catch more moments like the one she had the day before. But something felt different, off somehow. The street performer wasn't there. The woman by the fountain was gone. She asked a few regulars if they had seen the performer, but no one seemed to remember him. "He's here every day," Megan insisted, feeling a cold prickle of unease. "You must have seen him." A hot dog vendor gave her a confused look. "Lady, I've been here all week. There's no juggler." Back in her studio, Megan laid out the photos, studying them with growing unease. The woman by the fountain, the street performer, they were missing. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had been there one day and gone the next, as if they had vanished into thin air. Shaking off her unease, she chalked it up to coincidence. People come and go, especially in a city like New York. But as she thumbed through her portfolio, she noticed something chilling. This wasn't the first time it happened. There were other photos, taken over the past few weeks. An elderly man feeding pigeons, a street artist sketching portraits, a teenage girl with a skateboard. All of them had one thing in common. Megan couldn't find them again. It was as if they had been erased from existence. She set the camera down on her desk, its gleaming lens staring back at her like an unblinking eye. A shiver ran down her spine. "What have I gotten myself into?" she whispered. The Leica M3 sat in the dim light, silent but somehow watching her. It was just a camera, or so she had thought. Megan couldn't ignore the strange pattern any longer. It gnawed at her, an itch at the back of her mind she couldn't scratch. She spent the next few days scouring the city for any sign of the people in her photos, asking vendors, regular park goers, anyone who might have seen them, but the answers were always the same: blank stares and confused shrugs. Her frustration grew, mingled with a creeping sense of dread. It was impossible. People didn't just vanish without a trace, and yet, here she was, holding the evidence in her hands. Desperate for answers, Megan decided to research the history of the camera. She logged onto her computer and began her search. The Leica M3 had a storied past, known for its use by famous photographers. But as she delved deeper, she found an obscure forum where photographers discussed rare and cursed cameras. One post dated several years back caught her eye. "Beware the Leica M3 with a scratched lens. It's said to erase people from existence. The last known owner vanished after documenting a series of disappearances. If you find this camera, destroy it before it destroys you." Megan's blood ran cold. The Leica she had bought did have a small scratch on its lens, barely noticeable unless she knew where to look. She grabbed the camera, inspecting it closely. There it was, a tiny scratch along the edge of the glass. "This can't be real," she muttered. She wasn't superstitious. She dealt in facts, in things she could see and touch. But the evidence was mounting, and she couldn't deny it any longer. The camera wasn't just capturing images. It was doing something far worse. She flipped through the recent photos again, her hands trembling. Each image felt like a ghost, a fleeting moment stolen from time. In the margins of one photo, she noticed something she hadn't before. A faint, shadowy figure, standing just out of focus, almost as if watching the scene unfold. "What are you?" she whispered to the camera, her voice barely audible. The room seemed to grow colder, the lights dimming slightly. Megan's phone buzzed on the desk, jolting her out of her trance. It was a message from an unknown number. "You need to stop. Destroy the camera before it's too late." Her heart pounded. Someone knew. Someone had been watching her. She dialed the number, but there was no answer. Just a long, empty silence. Megan set the phone down, her mind racing. She was in over her head, but she needed to know the truth. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed the camera and a stack of old photos she hadn't looked at in years. If the curse was real, then the key to breaking it had to lie in the photos, and she was determined to find it, no matter the cost. Megan sat cross-legged on her living room floor, old photographs spread out around her like a mosaic of memories. Her hands trembled as she sifted through the images, searching for something she couldn't quite define. The photos spanned her entire career, decades of work, moments frozen in time. But she wasn't looking for the best shots. She was looking for faces she couldn't remember. And there they were, faces she hadn't thought about in years. An elderly woman sitting at a cafe, a young man playing guitar on a street corner, a child holding a balloon. They were all people she had photographed, and all of them had disappeared without a trace. Her breath hitched as she realized the pattern stretched back farther than she had imagined. This wasn't a recent phenomenon. It had been happening for years, ever since she started using the Leica. "Oh my God," she whispered. "How many people have I erased?" In the corner of one photo, she noticed a shadowy figure again. It was clear this time, a tall, thin man in a dark coat, watching from the edge of the frame. She hadn't noticed him before, but now she was looking. He was there in every photo she had taken with the cursed camera. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice cracking. As if in response, the phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "He's the one who cursed it. You have to destroy the camera. It's your only chance." Megan's eyes darted back to the Leica, sitting innocently on the coffee table. She knew what she had to do, but fear gripped her. Destroying the camera might break the curse, but it could also bring back everyone it had erased, including dangerous individuals who might be better left forgotten. Megan couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadowy figure from her photos seemed to lurk in every corner of her apartment, an uninvited guest haunting her through the lens of her own camera. The unknown messages had become her own lifeline, a thin thread connecting her to the truth about the Leica's curse. She dialed the number again, praying for an answer, but was met with silence. Slamming her phone down in frustration, she grabbed her coat and the camera. She needed to confront this head-on. If the man in the shadows was connected to the curse, she had to find him. Megan decided to return to the flea market, where she had first bought the Leica, hoping to track down the vendor who sold it to her. The market was quiet under the dim glow of the streetlights. Vendors were packing up their stalls, but Megan spotted the old man who had sold her the camera, hunched over a table filled with trinkets. His face was lined with age, and his eyes held a knowing sadness. "You remember me?" Megan asked, holding up the Leica. The old man's expression darkened. He nodded slowly. "I remember," he said in a raspy voice. "I warned you not to buy it. You didn't listen." Megan's heart raced. "What is this camera? Why are people disappearing when I take their picture?" The old man sighed, glancing around nervously as if he expected someone to be watching. He lowered his voice. "The camera once belonged to a photographer named Victor Crane. He was a brilliant but vengeful man. When he was dying, he cursed the camera, pouring his bitterness and hatred into it. He believed that certain people deserved to be erased, those who had wronged him, those who stood in his way." Megan felt a chill run down her spine. "But why am I the one making people disappear?" "You're not doing it," the man replied, his eyes locking onto hers. "Victor is. His spirit lingers in every photo you take. He chooses who vanishes. You become the instrument of his revenge." Megan took a step back, horror dawning on her face. "I ain't know. I never wanted this." The old man reached into his coat and handed her a small, faded photograph. It was a picture of Victor Crane himself, a gaunt, severe-looking man with piercing eyes. "If you want to end this, you must destroy the camera. But know this, breaking the curse will bring back everyone it's erased, even those Victor intended to erase for good reason. Dangerous people, criminals, worse." Megan's hands shook as she stared at the photo. She had a choice to make: destroy the camera and face the unknown consequences, or keep it and continue living with the burden of erasing innocent lives. As she turned to leave, a shadow fell over her. She looked up and froze, standing at the edge of the market. Half hidden in the darkness was the figure from her photos. The same tall man with the dark coat and hollow eyes. It was Victor Crane. Megan's breath caught in her throat. The man in the shadow stepped closer, his gaunt face illuminated by a flickering streetlight. It was Victor Crane, the spirit of the camera's curse, no longer just a figure in her photos, but standing right before her. "You found me," Victor said, his voice low and echoing, like a whisper carried by the wind. "I wonder how long it will take you." Megan's hands clenched around the camera. "You cursed this. You've been using me to erase people." Why? What's the point of all this? Victor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of anger flashing across his face. You don't understand, he hissed. I created this curse to rid the world of those who deserve to disappear. Liars, thieves, corrupt souls who prey on the innocent. You were just the latest tool, a photographer skilled enough to capture the right faces. Right faces, Megan snapped. The people I photographed weren't all bad. They were ordinary people with lives, families. You're taking away innocent lives, Victor. Victor's expression softened, but it wasn't pity, more like a weary acceptance. The curse has a life of its own now, beyond my control. It was meant for revenge, but it's grown into something darker. I am as much of a prisoner of it as you are. Megan felt a wave of pity for the man, but she couldn't let it deter her. She pulled the Leica up, pointing the lens directly at Victor. If I take your picture now, will it erase you? He laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. You think I haven't tried? I've been erased already. That's why you see me owning through the camera. I'm a ghost, a remnant trapped between frames. The only way to end this is to destroy the camera itself. Megan hesitated. And if I do, what happens then? The curse will break, Victor said quietly. But everyone it's taken will come back, even the dangerous ones. Are you ready for that responsibility? She looked down at the camera, feeling the weight like it was a burden on her soul. It had given her some of her best work. But at what cost? She remembered the faces of the people who had vanished. The street performer, the young woman by the fountain, the innocent lives that had been snuffed out without a trace. I can't keep this going, she said, her voice firm. I won't be part of your revenge anymore. Victor nodded, a strange look of relief crossing his face. Then do it. Finish it. Megan raised the camera above her head and brought it down against the concrete with all her strength. The lens shattered, the body cracked, and a burst of cold air rushed past her, like a sigh of relief from the spirits released. For a moment, the world was silent. Then the streetlights flickered back to life, and the shadowy figure of Victor Crane faded into the darkness, his face peaceful for the first time. Megan stood there breathing heavily, staring at the broken remains of the camera. The curse was lifted, but the consequences of her choices were only just the beginning. In the days that followed, news reports trickled in. People who had been missing for years suddenly reappeared, confused and disoriented. Among them were dangerous criminals, old enemies of Victor Crane, and innocent victims who had been erased by the curse. Megan watched the reports, knowing she had set something unpredictable into motion, but she also knew she had made the right choice. The Leica was gone, its curse broken, and for the first time in weeks, Megan felt a sense of freedom. She picked up her digital camera and walked into the sunlight, ready to capture moments that belonged to the real world once again.